and welcome our beloved viewers to RTD's News English edition. As usual, we begin tonight's news with the major and top highlights. Let's follow. Closing ceremony of the Holy Quran context. And on the international scene in Kiev, back to a nearly normal life. Those were our major top highlights. Welcome back to our newsroom, our beloved viewers. The President of the Republic, His Excellency Mr. Ismail Omar Guelleh, expressed his sad condolence to his Kenyan counterpart, Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, following the death yesterday, Friday, of the former head of state of this country, the late Mwai Kibaki. I make it my duty to convey to you on behalf of the people in the government of Djibouti and in my personal name, my saddened condolence as well as the perfect expression of my compassion and solidarity, wrote President Guelleh in a telegram sent to Mr. Kenyatta. Djibouti sympathizes all the more with the sister nation of Kenya in the ordeal of the passing of the late Mwai Kibaki, as he was an iconic image and prayed for all the peoples of the region, the head of state noted in the same document. A man of principle and conscience, he earned the unanimous esteem of his competitors for his programs and his talent as an audacious, visionary, and enlightened leader. President Ismail Omar Guelleh said in a tribute to the former Kenyan leader. He leaves behind a wide repertoire of culture and a worthy political and intellectual legacy, continued the head of state, who recalled the emblematic reforms carried out under his direct leadership, including the Vision 2030 development plan, is still in force in Kenya. The Director General of International Relations, located at the Plateau of Snake, hosted in the evening of Thursday, April 21, 2022, a ceremony of awarding prizes for the context of the reading of the Holy Quran. Indeed, the competition of recitation of the Holy Book was launched at the beginning of the blessed month of Ramadan, gathering all the security and defense forces. About 70 candidates, all ranks, participated in this competition, which was supervised and controlled by juries of the Ministry of Muslim Affairs and Waqfs, under the aegis of the Minister of Interior and Acting Minister of Defense, Mr. Said Nuh Hassan, and in the presence of Lieutenant General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, Chief of General Staff of the Armed Forces. This ceremony, organized around a collective iftar to strengthen the cohesion and unity that prevails within defense and security forces of the country, saw the participation of a picture of general officers, in this case the Brigadier General Tahir Ali Mohammed, Chief of Defense Staff Colonel Major Muhammad Kayat Guelleh, Deputy Chief of Defense Staff, the Chief of Staff of the National Gendarmerie, the Colonel Commander of the Republican Guard, the Deputy Commander of the Coast Guard, the Acting Director General of the National Police, the Colonel Commander of Civil Protection, and senior officials of the ADF. The Minister of Budget, Mr. Isman Ibrahim Roble, also marked his presence at this event. Note the presence of the Charge of the Affair of the Saudi Arabian Embassy and the military defense attached. This competition of the Holy Quran, including among other the recitation by heart of the first 20 chapters of the Holy Book, the Quran, the first 10 chapters, the first 5 chapters, and the first 3 chapters. The novelty of this year's competition also included the recitation of the 40 Nawawi Hadiths, the 30 and the 20 Hadiths, the first 10 winners for the recitation of the Al-Quran, and the first 6 winners of the recitation of the Hadiths were selected and were awarded prizes. On his arrival, Mr. Said Nuh Hassan was welcomed by the Chief of General Staff of the Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, in the presence of the Chief of Defense Staff, General Tahir Ali Mohammed, then together with the Chief of General Staff of the Armed Forces, the Minister of Interior and Acting Minister of Defense, Mr. Said Nuh Hassan, attended by the picket of the honor in his honor, and then moved to the gallery set up for the occasion where all the guests were waiting. his speech, General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, thanked His Excellency Mr. Saeed Nur Hassan, Acting Minister of Defense in charge of relations with the Parliament and the entire civilian and military delegation for attending this solemn closing ceremony of the Holy Quran. Words of our Creator, Allah Azza wa Jal, who guides all Muslims to happiness. On this great occasion, he said, "We are pleased to thank the Embassy of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in Djibouti and the military attached for their cooperation in supporting the organization of this competition. Our warm thanks to the Ministry of Muslim Affairs and Waqf for responding to our invitation and helping to set up an appreciation committee for the competition. We thank all those who have contributed in any way to the success of this blessed act, and we pray to God the Almighty that He will reward them on the Day of Judgment. To the winners, I ask them to continue to preserve the Holy Quran, to learn the interpretation and meaning of the Quran. In conclusion, we pray to Allah to accept our fasting, our good deeds, and to wrap us in His mercy." Following some verses of the Holy Book, the proclamation of the results of the contest was announced. Thus, the ceremony was the occasion to reward the winners who knew how to distinguish themselves through this contest. They were rewarded for this ardor as a token of special attention to them. They received the gifts from the hands of the Minister of Defense in charge of relations with the Parliament. By interim, Mr. Saeed Nur Hassan, the Harbi Group did not fail to animate the ceremony by religious songs on the occasion of the blessed month of Ramadan, praising the blessings of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace and salvation be upon him. It is, of course, with impatience that the hour of the Maghrib prayer sounded, which rang the break of the fast, privileged moment by any Muslim believer to quench his thirst. Let's listen to the religious songs of the Harbi Group.
Hadiro walow qurankaaga weyn baan kugu qiraynaa dalkii qarada weyn ee qandooda baan daayimo kugu qiraynaa سلام عليك يا نبي سلام عليك سيدي يا إمام الحرام سلام عليك يا نبي سلام عليك سيدي يا إمام الحرام فايلا كرابي دبعتا سعد يلي وداعتا يلي نبي شفاعتا ثم تابنعك حتى علم عينك حياتها يا إمام الحرام سلام عليك يا نبي سلام عليك سيدي يا إمام الحرام سلام عليك يا نبي سلام عليك سيدي يا إمام الحرام
Of the call to the sunset prayer, Maghrib prayer, the participants were able to quench their thirst around an iftar, thus breaking the day of fasting. After the Maghrib prayer, the guests shared together under the background of the religious songs of the Harbi group a hot meal around the table, thus reinforcing the cohesion in the spirit of union which prevails within the ADF. Let's watch.
الله.
In order to address possible shortcomings in health indicators and with view to improving the country's health coverage in the long term, the Ministry of Health, Dr. Ahmed Roble, presided over the launch of a series of continuous training courses for medical staff at the People's Palace. Thus, is training the skills of human resources in health is at the heart of this new strategy, with the establishment of a capacity building scheme for medical staff, especially nurses, midwives, and laboratory technicians. To this end, the Ministry of Health, through the Directorate of Human Resources and Training, has set up a committee responsible for designing a continuous training and support program for paramedical staff over the next 3 years. The Minister of Health emphasized in his speech that this short and medium term training for health personnel must meet the health needs of our fellow citizens, but also to strengthen our health system in a general way. The Ministry of Youth and Culture celebrated this morning the World Book Day in the 5 CDC, benefiting from a service of a reading center and cultural animation under the theme The Tales in the News. Literary meetings and cultural animations took place and similarly in the 5 Clack of Djibouti located in the CDC of Section 7, Arhiba, Wahlidaba, Ali Sibih, and Obokha, have taken part in these meetings of illustrious authors like Aisha Muhammad Roble, Umar Yusuf, Shukri Usman, Elmi, Abubakar Farid, and Muhammad Aden. The Minister, Dr. Hibu Mumin Aso, went to the CDC of Section 7 where she was welcomed by the Director of that CDC, Mr. Muhammad Ali Farah, the National Coordinator of CLACS, Mr. Asli Mahmoud, the Director of Culture, the Director of CDCs, and several other senior executives of the MGC. The director of the CDC of Section 7 and its community council, women leaders, and volunteers of this neighborhood. The day was punctuated by animations orchestrated by 2 authors, Mr. Umar Yusuf Ali, author of several tales, Shukri Usman, who has just published a new collection of the Caribbean editions, as well as by Mrs. Nima Muhammad Farah, the head of the Department of Social Integration of the MJC. During the ceremony, membership cards were handed out to the several subscribers of the Center of Reading and Cultural Animation, Marketing, the digitization of the registration register for activities and clubs of the CDC. The objective is, in fact, a turning point in the revitalization of the CDC, which consists in establishing a digital database of users and volunteers attending the centers. The minister congratulated the teams who worked in synergy to celebrate the importance of books and reading with authors and readers. She also warmly thanked all the national writers who responded to the invitation before wishing all literature lovers a happy holiday. The sports family of the city of Ali Sibih organized yesterday a collective iftar in which took part the Secretary of State for Sports, Mr. Hassan Mohammed, as well as local authorities such as the Prefect of Ali Sibih, Musa Aden, the President of the Regional Council, Sharmanke Hassan, as well as the entire sports family composed of the club, handball, volleyball, football, veteran basketball. The ceremony was marked by a presentation of awards and trophies by the Secretary of State for Sports, Mr. Hassan Mohammed Kamil, to actors who have contributed to the development of sports in the region over the past 10 years, namely the former president of the Regional Council of Ali Sibih, Mr. Umar Ahmed Wais, the Deputy Director of the Secretary of State in Sports in Ali Sibih, Mr. Ahmed Musa, the President of the Regional League in Ali Sibih, Mr. Jibril Umar Hosha. This joint iftar was an opportunity for the Secretary of State in charge of sports, all the presidents of sport clubs in the city of Ali Sibih, for their collaboration and their contribution to the success in favor of sport. This collective iftar was especially a moment sharing and convivial sports family of the city of Ali Sibih. The Ambassador of the Republic of Djibouti to the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia and Permanent Representative to the African Union and the Economic Commission for Africa, Mr. Abdi Mahmoud Yebe, presented yesterday his credentials to the President of the Republic of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, as the new Ambassador of the Republic of Djibouti to Rwanda with a residence in Addis Ababa. During the ceremony, Ambassador Abdi Mahmoud conveyed to the Rwandan President the warm and fraternal greetings of his Djiboutian counterpart, Mr. Ismail Omar Gelle, as well as his favorite wishes in peace and prosperity for the broadly Rwandan people, underlining the historical and fraternal relations existing between the two countries. President Kagame congratulated the new ambassador on his new appointment and welcomed him. The president also recalled the previous relations between the two countries and took the opportunity to ask the new ambassador to convey his greetings and friendship to his Djiboutian counterpart. the Secretary General of the Ministry of National Education, Mr. Mohammed Abdullah Mahyoub, and the new Presidents of the Regional Council of Dakhil and Ali Sibih, Mr. Mahad Hussein Ahmed, and Mr. Shaman K. Hassan, as well as the inspectors of the region, signed an agreement for the transfer of management of school catering in the regions. The signing ceremony took place at the headquarters of the Ministry of National Education in the presence of the head of Department of School Catering, Mrs. Saida Wais. This meeting provided an opportunity to discuss the mechanisms of good management and operational functioning of school caterings with the new arrangement put in place by this new convision of transferring the management of canteens to local authorities and regional education officials. The Secretary General, Mr. Mohammed Abdullah Mahyoub, explained the new rules and missions included by the transfer of the management of school canteens to the region. Also, he said that the canteens would be managed jointly by the Ministry of National Education and the presidents of the region. For their part, the new presidents of the Regional Council of a region of Dakhil and Ali Sibih thanked the Ministry of National Education in turn for the sharing of responsibilities with the co-management system and reaffirmed their commitment to work closely with the regional education officials. Finally, the two parties signed the conviction documents. And let me take you to Rwanda this time, where as part of the work of the activities of the FETA African Continental Free Trade Area, a Djiboutian delegation participated yesterday in two workshops on tools for operating the FTAA for trade in goods and regulation techniques in trade and services in Kigali. These workshops come at a time when Djibouti is in the process of developing a national strategy on the FTAA. In addition to the Djiboutian delegation, the workshop brought together private sectors, representatives, and chief negotiations from Burundi, Comoros, Madagascar, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Is Kyiv returning to normal life? More and more people are returning to the Ukrainian capital. Despite the mayor's warnings that the city is not yet safe, every day new cafes and restaurants reopen. At the Tintin restaurant in the city center, it is hard to believe that Ukraine is in the middle of a war. Well, by this, our beloved viewers, we conclude this edition. Thank you for being with us, and make sure to tune in later for more. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you once again for joining us. Take care.